we are back with another session where we are going to discuss about the role of communication in business. Hi, Peggy. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Rohit.
Yeah, Peggy, in this session, we are going to discuss about role of communication in business, how communication works in conveying business value, how communication works in negotiation, and how communication works in client relationship. So the first question for you is, what strategies can businesses use to convey their unique selling points and communicate the benefit of their products or services to their client?
Yeah, interesting one. I think the first part is what's really crucial is that the business know what their value is they provide. And obviously successful businesses have a very clear value they provide. What I find interesting sometimes, even though they operate very successfully and they provide massive value, hardly anybody is actually able to provide a one sentence statement. You could also relate to it as an elevator pitch, which I don't really like that word because it always implies a selling push. But what is really crucial is that somebody can phrase the soul of their business in one sentence. So, okay. And anything that has value, anything that provides value has soul. Anything that does not provide value doesn't have any soul. Because it's not about just, I'm doing something and I'm getting money. It's not an exchange. It has to have something which goes deeper in terms of referring to the client's needs, what you have to be able to put into one sentence. Okay. Right. So if you buy a consumer goods, that's really easy because consumer goods have typically a very clear value, right? If you're selling a washing powder, you're going to be able to claim that it washes out every stain, for example, while keeping all the colors nice and bright. Easy, right? If you go into a service, it's much harder because you're probably serving at multiple levels. So there it's really important that to base your communication on something very specific, which the client is able to catch on right away. And in your communication, you have to keep repeating it. People make the mistakes that they think, I communicated one thing really clearly, but it doesn't stick because the receiver, on the other hand, he gets so many informations. While you know what you're talking about, the person on the other side might not catch on to it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, makes sense. Now, coming to the part of negotiation, like how important is like thorough preparation and negotiation? Because during negotiation, you need a better communication. And what are some key aspects to consider during this phase? Like while negotiating with your client, what are the key aspects one should consider?
So again, negotiation in today's times where you have endless choices is key. I mean, it's always been key, but especially today in a world where everything becomes comparable. Again, if you're able to communicate a value to your service or your product, if you're able to go on a deeper level than just the actual, claim, let's put it this way. Again, if you were able to connect to the soul of whatever you are serving the client with, negotiation becomes easier because then you're not in a push situation. You can create a pull situation, meaning the other side, you have to convey to the other side what use or what purpose you serve them with. That's like a foundation of the negotiation. The other thing is, I'm a big fan, still a big fan. It's really conservative, but it's a very big fan of a win-win. It's a very misused word. It's not so much about, a negotiation like on a Turkish bazaar. It's more about, showing the client, this is your win and this is what I'm getting out of it. So be honest about it. Be frank. And the other thing is, if it comes to hard negotiations, which can happen, right, to difficult negotiations, I found the most successful and useful trick I have been able to experience and learn myself the hard way is You can go into a negotiation, which is difficult, with a very clear objective, but you have to be able to be flexible in how you get there, first of all.
Okay.
And you typically, if you really come into if you're really feeling cornered, the best way is to make yourself independent of the outcome. So that means you're the strongest negotiator if you're able to let the result go. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but if you really hold on to something like, I must, for example, if you're in a negotiation with a potential, employer, and you're in a difficult situation, as long as you hold on and hold on and hold on to not losing something, it's going to, the other side's going to feel that. They're going to feel that you're holding on to whatever outcome you want because you're in fear, but you can't negotiate. It's not a good place to negotiate out of fear. You have to negotiate from deep conviction that the outcome serves them, the other side, and yourself. Right?
Okay.
So this is the only way to come out stronger in the negotiation, in my opinion.
Okay. And I just want to add one more thing. Like I heard somewhere, like someone mentioned that active listening is a crucial part in negotiation. Like, and according to you, how can it help in uncovering the genuine priorities of all the parties involved? Because in a business, there are two parties. One is the service provider, and one is the service the person who is taking the service, or you call it as client or the business person. So how how well this listening, active listening, is crucial in this phase?
I think it's really it's interesting because we're leaving out a big step here. At the beginning, we talked about what's the communication of the value of a business. Okay, now we know what value we are communicating, right? Most businesses are very in love with their product and their service, right? So they come out of this conviction that, my service is the best, my product is the best, my washing powder is the best. I mean, this is not an argument, right? This is not value creation. So we talked about that at the beginning. More important than being in love with your product is being in love with your client. So when I'm saying being in love with your client, you have to know who sits across from you. What are these clients' needs? And that you only figure out if you listen actively. What does that mean? It means that you ask a question and you let the person talk. You do not interrupt. And you take whatever this person feeds back to you and you convert it into something which kind of clicks like a Lego piece, right?
Okay.
To your product or service. And you can only do that if you do active listening. So meaning you take your client, you love your client, right?
Yeah.
You love what your client has to tell you, even though it's hard sometimes. And you use that either to have a big learning, or you use it in a perfect world. You use it as a Lego piece saying, you just mentioned that. You just mentioned that you stay with a simple example of a washing powder. You just mentioned that, oh my God, all your beautiful red clothes are losing the color, right? So you just mentioned that. And let me tell you, like, our washing powder has this new XYZ, which ensures that the brilliance of you get what I'm saying, right? And you can only match this if you do very active listening.
Got it. But one thing I noticed that during nowadays, many brands do over promising, like where they tell more about their product, but it's not the genuine thing what they are delivering. So can you provide examples of how business can exceed clients' expectation without over promising? Like not telling we are the best in the market. How can they do without without any over promising? What suggestion you would like to give?
You just said it yourself, right?
Yes.
Do not do not over promise and under deliver. I think that's the biggest mistake businesses make. And they also, again, right, they think it's expected. So a supplier of a provider of a service or a product, they think, we have this big bunch of flowers. We can promise them roses and lilacs and everything, right? And gladiolas, but that's not necessary. What you have, if you know your client, if you're in love with your client, if you know your target group, you are able to tailor your services and your product to the needs of this target group. Then you focus on those specific needs of the target group, and you potentially offer one value, which is very specific, very tangible, and which is definitely not overpromised, right? But for example, there's a good example on that, right? So if you say, let's go to loudspeakers, right? So it's a commoditized product today, right? This is a loudspeaker. So you're saying, okay, our loudspeaker, you have to decide, right? We know we have a clientele who listens to, for example, only classical music, okay? So what you're doing is you have multiple ways, right? You can tell them, for classical music, we have special, tones and notes, which are really, this loudspeaker is basically emulating that type of music in the best way. That would be one great thing, right? But if you say we have a loudspeaker which emulates the music, where we have a service 24/7, which you can have a hotline and basically you can bring it back anytime. This is just over promising, right? And it's not necessary if you know your client. You can't, in today's world, everybody tries to serve everybody with everything.
Yeah.
And that's not delivering value, right? Look at yourself. Look, everybody who listens to this, look at yourselves, right? Why are you purchasing something? Because you're purchasing something because you typically have one reason to purchase it. And how do you know that? Because when you tell your friend, Rohit, that you bought a loudspeaker, you will be able to tell your friend why you bought it. You're not going to tell them, I bought it because of 5 reasons. You're going to typically tell the person, I bought it because of that. I bought it because it's funky. Or I bought it because it does great music. I listen to classical music, right? To stay with that example. But you're not going to argue with 5 points.
So true.
That's,
at the end, it's
that's
the
magic.
client feedback. It's the client feedback.
Yes.
And this is what contribute to long-term relationship building with the brand, with the client. Okay.
This is also how you retain clients. For everybody who listens here, it's the worst thing because client acquisition in today's world is very hard and very expensive. So the worst thing is if you have somebody who purchases because they have an expectation which you as a supplier made this big, right? Because you offered them 5 things and you're only fulfilling one. You're never going to see that client again. So really my warmest recommendation here is promise one thing, stick to that one thing, deliver on your promise. So anything you promise, you have to deliver.
Got it. And the last final question for you. Can you provide examples where like you found the brand delivered things perfectly and then according to you, like in your career, like you have been dealing with many businesses in your like last 20 years. Just share us one good example with us that you felt that this brand performed well in communication or they did better communication with their clients. Any good example?
I have multiple. I mean, there's the good and the bad, right? So let's take the example of Elizabeth Arden, where I was a general manager for quite a while. I found that this business had a true soul to it. It was the founder's soul, and it was purchased multiple times by multiple owners. What they managed to keep alive was Elizabeth Arden's soul to the business. So any product which they launched, so a good example is there was a fragrance, which it's still out there, which is called Fifth Avenue. They launched that fragrance. It was associated with the Fifth Avenue beauty parlor of Elizabeth Arden on the Fifth Avenue in New York City. And that was a perfect launch, right? Because it was associated with the founder. It was associated, that's obviously an emotional connection, which they were able to build. And that you have to do in highly commoditized or highly competitive environments. You have to have an emotional hook. And that I found a beautiful example, right? So that was one example. Then we have a very different example. you have somebody who really created a great value was the Yukonuba brand, which is a dog food brand. As I said, very different example, which basically provided the dog owner it was one of the first products which provided the dog owner with a reason to feed a dry kibble. It's a dry kibble of dog food, but they promised a result you could see in the dog, right? Perfect delivery. But it was it came in a very ugly packaging. The first Yukonuba thing was like in a milk bottle, right? Milk bag, like one of those tetras, pink, ugly, expensive. But expensive. But what they did is they provided value. So they promised something. They promised this is the best food for your dog. This is what's going to happen to its coat. This is what's going to happen to his health. And they delivered on it. Perfect execution, right? Perfect execution. And again, I mean, these are examples where you have one argument, one value, very clear. One is the emotional one, and the other one is, a really factual one. So I think, yes, that's the two examples I can come up with. And then, Rohit, there are some other examples, right? If you... And I want to mention this. There is also drivers which are purely emotional. So if you take a trip to Switzerland, right, there's this beautiful place in Lucerne. I'm just giving you, because I'm trying to tell everybody here is that sometimes value can be purely emotional. So you're going to Lucerne, you're driving through this beautiful country with a little train. It's really like this, right? And you think, oh my God, I'm in this railway landscape. You come to Lucerne, there's a big lake and the mountains and the snowy tops. And you have this beautiful feeling, right? Because you have doing this special trip. So you walk into a shop and you buy one of those snow globes. You know which ones? You shake and it snows, and it has the mountains and it says Lucerne on it. And when you turn it around, it says on the bottom, made in China. So why is that? Yeah, but why is that? People will still bring it home. They love this product. They know it's not made in Switzerland, but they bought it where they have an emotion attached. So what I'm trying to tell you is do never underestimate the emotional value of any product or service you provide, because there always needs to be an emotional value. Because in today's world, we have lots of competition. So this is why I'm trying to tell you this. Obviously, the Lucerne example is an extreme one with the emotional attachment, right? But try to create a soul, and that's going to you're going to be able to retain your client.
Okay. Thank you. And Peggy, one last message to all our viewers, who are going to be an entrepreneur or who have already started their business. One last final message. We are winding off the session. I would like you to share one good message to our viewers.
One message in what context?
I mean, we discussed about communication and business. So this session is for all the budding entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs who are there and they want to improve their business. So
I think it's a reminder, Rohit. I think a reminder needs to be, we all have to share a message. So every one of us, right? Believe that you have something special to offer in life, and make it very specific. Make it very specific. Focus on one thing. Do it well. And do not overpromise. Just deliver. That's what I want to give out as a recommendation. Yes.
Nice. Thank you so much, Peggy. It was a wonderful session. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.